Hey, what's up everybody? My name is Alckemy. Welcome to the channel. Today, you and I, friends, are going to be taking a look at Bitwig versus Ableton Live 12. As most of you know, Ableton Live 12 just released and the beta has been out for a while. I didn't get my hands on it until about a week ago, but I have, you guys know that I'm a Bitwig person now. Hey, NX. And I recently went to purchase Ableton Live 12 to create a pack. I make really cool, obviously it's 12s because it's the bigger number. So yeah, I decided to cop Ableton Live 12 in order to make a pack similar to what I do within Faceplanet and Bitwig. And I wanted to kind of just relay my thoughts on the things that I found. And I've got this list that I'm going to go through, and I'm going to try to get through that first. But I wanted this to be on stream because I know that I'm not going to catch everything. And I wanted to give people a place to where we can kind of maybe hopefully like all come to the table and just talk about the pros and cons. I will say, like, if you come in and you're just like, screw Ableton or screw Bitwig, this sucks. Oh, dude, all of them suck. Get Studio One. I'm just going to ban you because I don't, yeah, that's just, I don't want to have those kinds of conversations. But I do think that coming to the table, we can kind of have a really cool discussion and talk about the pros and cons, and then all leave with a little bit of insight. And the reason why I think that this is a good thing to do, not just because, we're talking and geeking out about things, is because maybe someone's out there that has a little bit of music production knowledge, or maybe somebody doesn't, and they're starting to figure out, what their needs are as opposed to demoing everything. As always, I am not sponsored by Bitwig. They don't pay me for anything. I prefer Bitwig, so if that's like the bias that I have, but that doesn't mean that I'm trying to say you should get Bitwig instead. It means, hey, here's some thoughts, and here's some things that I like about Ableton. Here's some things that I like about Bitwig. Here's some things that I don't like about each one. And if I don't talk about anything, or if you notice that I missed something, then we can discuss that as well. I really just want to focus on like the more unique features, because as you can see, like there's a lot of stuff that like they look very similar opposed to the tracks being on the side or whatever. I mean, even now you can see that I've got the mixer right here, which they recently added. There's a mixer thing on here. So like they are more similar than they are different. But there's a couple of key things that I've written down that I'm going to try to go through, like I said before. And then hopefully you guys will leave with a little bit more education on what may or may not be best for you. I've tried 12, and although the MIDI tools and browser changes are cool, if it has all the structure quirks, it drove me away from it. Okay, 100% agree. That's why I'm still with Bitwig. But we can talk about that more in a little bit. So I think what I'm going to do is we're going to open up with Live 12 because that's obviously the most recent release, even though Bitwig 5 came out not long ago. I am going to open up with a complaint because maybe somebody can help me out. But if you notice over here on the right, I haven't seen the ability to hit the D thing so I can change the track delay over on the right side. Now it has to be shown within the mixer here, and also like the CPU detection. If anybody knows how to fix that, I don't know if you can or not. And if you can't, that's dumb. So we'll keep that in mind, but I'll bring that more up here in just a little bit. So what's new with Live 12? First of all, the MIDI stuff is really cool. I think that maybe I haven't spent enough time with it, but it's kind of neat because what you can do is create a MIDI clip, and you can see that within this clip thing over here, you've got lots of different transformation options. Also, something that is unique to Ableton compared to Bitwig, maybe I think FL has it or whatever, is that you can format everything to a scale. I've talked about I've talked about this in the past, but This feature is convenient, but if you need this in order to make music, you are a beginner. No offense, but it is cool. It is convenient, but this has never been a must-have. They both have stuff to where you can format any kind of MIDI into a scale. But the reason why this sets this apart from being neat is because it actually prints the MIDI compared to the Bitwig features. So I think that Bitwig actually has more MIDI options, but what's cool about this, I have no idea what this is, by the way, we don't even need to listen to it, we just need to see this for context, is that you can fit things into a scale, you can invert them, you can do like interesting stretching. Wait, we need to highlight all of these. So you can grab all of these and do interesting kinds of stretching like this. You can add intervals. You can change different patterns or set or humanize, which is really neat. Then you've got the transform options, which you can move and kind of create lots of different transformation options with this. And I've never seen this before. I don't even think that FL has anything like this. The reason why this is significant is because it's on the timeline. View, arrangement track, controls, track options. Let me see here. View, arrangement controls, track options. Thank you. Okay, so that is not a complaint. I appreciate that. Yeah, so that is still there. That exists. Thank you so much. I've had a feeling that it was there, but yeah, they took that away. And so if anybody has that problem, thank you, Romacy. I appreciate that. So with this, as you can see, like you can do lots of different cool transformation options and stuff. You can do different kinds of generating. And I think that this is honestly like really cool just to get lost in, especially if you're looking for inspiration and stuff, because the transformation options within this is kind of equivalent to operators, except operators is a little bit more conformed with the MIDI that you're working. There's not really a lot of like transposition type things. And it can print stuff, but it's not quite the same. So, and then also you can conform all of this stuff into a scale, which I think is really freaking cool. They've got quite a large list of scales, and like that's a great option. And this is something that is objectively an improvement on MIDI kinds of workflow. We have a new device, so let me get rid of this, which is called Roar. I think Roar is okay, and that's a personal opinion. And feel free to agree or disagree with me. But one of the things that I find really quirky is that every single device has very different modulation built into it, and it drives me insane. So check this out. You've got this thing over here, and you've got like noise and different kinds of modulators that are built in stuff and that are designed this way. But then if you pull up something that would be like, I don't know, say like meld, which would be another one of the new effects. I really want like a universal system with this that you can utilize in order to kind of understand, because it feels like I have to like teach myself different modulation like approaches within each device. And I'm not really a big fan of that. So you've got your LFOs here and stuff. This does not have random, but it has a bunch of really cool like morphing stuff that you can utilize that kind of changes, you know, like the way that you manipulate the waveform. And so it's like, this should be on everything. I feel like this should be baked into all that stuff. That being said, it is cool, but I don't understand why everything is so different. And I don't like, I think that it's probably just because of the source coding, or maybe different people design these things. And there is something to be said about having different options and stuff, but we'll talk more about that here in just a second. So another key thing that's not new, but is a big deal, there is a solution, I'll tell you in just a second, but MIDI capture, right? So if I have an idea, then I can just hit this little button and we have MIDI capture. Bitwig, in contrast, does not natively have something like that. And if that's a deal breaker for you, don't stress, because there is a free option, which you can get the pro version for like 15 bucks. But there is MIDI cap that is free from Birds Things. Sorry, that's a preset bank that I have, but I put it on the wrong thing. And I also cannot show you that. So we can just pull this out, and then it will ask me all the time signature, and you can say no. So that technically exists, but that's not baked into Bitwig. So just let that be known. Switching DAWs for different methods on like the same project would drive me so insane. Well, I mean, both Bitwig can actually open Bitwig projects on like this. But also, like, I mean, there's certain things that you can utilize in order to make really cool and whatnot. But yeah, actually, I didn't mean to do that. But yeah, so that's inherently not built in within that. And that's just one thing that I think that, you know, some people like to argue over. And I can't talk about Ableton Live without talking about Max for Live, because in theory, Max is an incredible plugin that you can build your own plugins. You can do lots of crazy and cool things. And lots of people have been supporting Max for Live with custom like effects and racks and whatever for years, that it has like over a decade of a legacy of like really cool stuff. So that's one thing that I think, you know, can be kind of a deal breaker. Bitwig has the grid. There's some complaints that I have with that. We'll talk about that when it's time to talk about Bitwig, but there's that. The next thing is, hey, Future. The next thing is Sport. Come on, bro. Show me some respect. The next thing is, what's it called? The drum rack. So if we take a look at the instruments, the drum rack has a new feature called replacing. So maybe if I can just pull up a kit or something like a 505, what you can do with this is just replace some of this stuff with a random sound, which I think is actually pretty neat. Or it can randomize. And with this, this is something that is relatively unique. You can push a random button and have snapshots of whatever macros you have as a preset on here. And that's something that with this new rack that I'm building is really freaking cool. And what I mean by that is if you take a look at one of the presets that I'm making here, hold on one second, this proof of concept, something that you actually can do this in Bitwig, but you can't make snapshots of it, which is kind of annoying. Sorry, this might take a second, or it might crash on me. We'll see what happens first. I think it's going to crash on me. I have not downloaded the stable version of Bitwig 12 yet. So, okay, there we go. So what's really cool about this is you can see that you can create snapshots like this. So like this rack that I'm building has all different kinds of sounds in it. So we can kind of just do a quick demo of that. It's not ready, not for sale. I'm not trying to sell you guys anything, just so you know. So we got bass, we have percussion, we have a pad that you can make, we have a pluck that you can make, and then we can create different atmospheres with this. So within this, what you can do is you can randomize all of this, and then now I have no idea what this is going to sound like, but we can create really cool snapshots from this. And then we just go new, and then now we have that snapshot with whatever sound that was. We can go randomize and then go new, and then do it again. Create a new snapshot, randomize. And then we can tweak it and then save that as a snapshot or refer back to it. So the snapshot system and the randomization on that front is actually really cool. And that's something that I appreciate about Ableton a lot. We are going to talk about my frustration with the general modulation system in a second, because as you can see, this is a rack within a rack, within more racks, and having to map everything to a macro first in order to map it to the outside macro is a pain in the ass. And we'll talk about my frustration with that later, but that piece is really cool. And I want to talk about the good things. The other things that I think that are a really big talking point that Ableton has are specific devices that for a really long time we actually didn't have within Bitwig. Bitwig technically has a clipper now, but it behaves in a very different way, and it's not the same as just hitting saturator and then hitting soft clip. There's nothing like this that technically exists. Within Bitwig, you have something called the filter plus, where if you turn the filter off and you leave this either on push or heat, it'll keep it at minus like 2 or minus 4, I think, if you're on heat. But for some reason, some of the releases that I've been doing with this do not respond to this. And it's weird because sometimes they fix it, sometimes they don't. So I don't know if this is going to work right now, but let's go ahead and pop this on to where we can see the project here. I think that I need to expand this. Come on, mix. So where's this at? Open this up. Oh, I think that I need to do the track delays here and then go to the master. I'm not really sure why that's not popping out. That should be popping out. What do I not have on here in order to see why this isn't monitoring? What's going on here? Why is... Oh, maybe it's because of the information. There we go. Sorry, I didn't have the information up. Okay. So this is hidden at minus 5.3 right now. So if I turn this up... Okay, so right now you can see that this is clipping. If you push this up past, it's going to go over. Hey, what's up, Vertex? But right now it's working. It doesn't always work, and so that's just something to be mindful of. But with Ableton, it's always had that. We also have the glue compressor. We also have the iconic OTT, multi-band dynamics. So like these are things that like you can get elsewhere, but they are extremely handy tools, especially if you just like want to buy the live suite. So saturator, glue compressor, these are amazing mixing tools that you can just be like soft clip, and there you go. It's very easy to get stuff to be extremely loud. Ableton is missing a true transient shaper. There is drum bus, which does have some cool features, but it's not quite the same. I think that you can push the transients, but I don't think that you can close the transients, if I'm not mistaken, unless if this has some kind of hard compressor thing. It is cool because this is kind of like Decap's. Well, drum bus came out first, but this is kind of like Decap's knock, because you can add like a sub to what you're doing. And then you can have like hard styles of compression and trimming and whatnot, but it's not necessarily a true transient shaper, where Bitwig has something like that. Stop. Don't even go there. So some of the native devices are really cool. I think that Roar is kind of whatever. One of the biggest issues that I have with Ableton is that there is like the filtering on, I just typed in Ableton, the filtering situations on here is extremely difficult to work with. Roar is the best example of being able to, or the most flexible, but it doesn't cut enough. It doesn't, to me, it's not able to like be as hard enough. So you can't set this to multiband to where you have a frequency split. It would be really cool if you can put effects inside of this, kind of like the nested devices within Bitwig. We'll talk about that later. And you can add modulation to all this, but the slopes on here are very soft and very gentle. So you have to stack multiple instances of this Roar in order to be able to cut, and then you can balance it out with the distortion types, which the distortion types sound really cool. There's a feedback option for making things sound like more metallic with walls of sound. If you're into like Doom compressor style sounds and stuff, that's really cool. But something that is like inherently important within my sound design is the ability to do something like this, which Ableton does not have a native solution. There's probably a Max for Live device for it, but I don't make devices with those because somebody else made that. So if you take a look right here with this EQ, this is kind of cool because what I can do with this is just offset the whole thing. And that means that I can make custom filters. Now on one end, if we talk about EQ8, I am getting a little bit derailed, but it's okay because these are things that are important to me. If you make EQ8, then you actually can come in and make custom filter shapes. But what's odd to me is that if you highlight everything, you can move it and do, different kinds of stuff to it, but there's no way to modulate everything all at once. And so what you have to do is you have to open up like an LFO or something, which I'm going to save this for the end because again, I'm trying to dance around modulation, but you have to map the frequencies of all these, and then you have to try to pinpoint the distance and stuff of this setup. Now, one thing that this has that I actually haven't seen in any other EQ that is really cool is the scale mode. So if you actually use this just to create vowels and stuff, kind of like so, this is actually really cool. And this is something that, people like Skrillex have used in the past, and this would be like the way that you could make up for it. But wouldn't it be really cool if you could like move it all together without having to do some insane ass setup? There's that. So let me see what else I got on here that I wanted to do. The CPU display is pretty cool. So if you go into your mixer, you can see this right here where it'll tell you how much CPU each track is going, each track is using. And that's really good in case if like you have a computer that you're trying to be resourceful with or trying to be more efficient. And then this is really funny, but themes, right? So Ableton 12 has themes. You can change the color. You can be super flexible with this of the appearance, even though this still looks like Microsoft Excel, but we won't tell anybody that. But yeah, it's got different themes that you can change into. Bitwig does not have anything like that. Actually, that's not true. There's one thing that Bitwig has that I'll show you here in a second. But I mean, yeah, there's a bunch of different themes and like lots of cool stuff that you can do. With Bitwig, you can have a light theme or a dark theme, but there's no color, like coloring everything, which is kind of not so fun. Hey, Kara. Oh, sorry. Hi, Victor. What's up? So there's that. There is a groove pool that's built in, so that's different compared to Bitwig. We'll talk about that in a second. And if I'm not mistaken, I think those are the major differences. So like you've got different audio devices, which could be a deal breaker. That's why it's really important for you to demo stuff to figure out what you need. I'm still like missing some effects from Ableton within Bitwig, but luckily there's a lot of third-party effects that I've copped for Bitwig, like the glue compressor, right? There's a thing that exists from the same maker called the glue. It is more expensive and you do have to buy it, but you know, there's that. As far as like a clipping solution, I honestly just use Newfangled Saturate. Sometimes it goes on sale for 25 bucks, and this is my favorite clipper because it's spectral and it's pretty sick. Both Ableton and Bitwig have spectral effects. Okay, so let's talk about all the things that I love about Bitwig that is really freaking cool. And this is going to like, I know that there's a lot of Ableton heads and stuff, but please hear me out because I think that this is going to like really help you set aside like where the differences behind these two come in, and you'll be like, ah, okay, if I want more of this, I'm going to go with Ableton. If I want more of this, I'm going to go with Bitwig. The number one thing that I want to talk about that is the most important thing to me is the audio editing. That's fine. Don't worry about this. So check this out. You can't do this in Ableton, but look at this. I can edit all these clips at once. I can add effects to this. I can pitch them all up at once. And any kind of warp modes or whatever, I can do that all at once. The clips in here are also completely customizable. So if I want to take that section out and insert a different sound within this, I can do that. And what that basically means is, aside from being able to have the clip launcher and the arranger on both sides, if I toss this in like a drum loop or something, then I can customize the drum loop. And on that note, we were talking about the MIDI stuff that Ableton has, but this has both MIDI and this applies to both MIDI and audio respectively. But we have things like repeats, kind of like so, operators. Both Ableton and Bitwig have stuff like chants, but we also have recurrences to where we can set up a pseudo sequencer about, you know, every off thing or whatever. This is going to be useful. We also have randomization of a lot of different options like the gain, the pan, the pitch. At the Ableton users' brains just exploded. Well, it's pretty cool. And not only that, but you can push the tempo of the warp modes on here past 999. So this will keep going as long as you want to stretch it. And I know that you cannot do that in Ableton. It will only go up to 999 as a cap before you have to resample and keep moving that in. So the flexibility that you have within Bitwig as far as audio editing is pretty immense. I will say that some people prefer the warp modes in Ableton, and respectfully so. I think that one thing that's really important about the audio editing within Ableton is that you have to, one thing that you can do rather that you cannot do, let me find an audio thing. Samples? Yeah. Doesn't matter. One thing that you can do on this that you cannot do in Bitwig is if you set this to repitch mode, I believe, then you can actually repitch this, and or is it complex? Which one is it? Or maybe you unwarp it. You can still pitch this to where this will push. Why did that do that? You can still push this to where this will extend or push it out according to the tempo that you have. And you can't do that in Ableton or in Bitwig as easily. You still can technically. So you can move this into warp mode and then you can go to repitch, but it does it by tempo as opposed to actually being able to pitch stuff. And so that's kind of frustrating. That's something that we've been asking Bitwig for a really long time. But just if that's a deal breaker for you, thanks so much, Get Up in Life. I really appreciate it. Next thing, modulation. Oh my gosh, you guys, I've been saving this for now, but the modulation inside of Bitwig is absolutely fucking cracked. So first off, you have project modulators, which is new to Bitwig 5.0. And what that means is I can take a single modulator and put it on the master track and apply this to anything that is anywhere else. So I can apply it to, I believe anyways, if I go here and hit the phase plant thing. Am I doing something wrong here? I think I am. Hold on one second. You can apply project modulators to basically anything that you can automate. So let me see here. Why is that coming out like that? Oh, here we go. There it is. So we just click this. This is the project modulator, so it's always on every single track. So what that means is I can do that here. Now I can take the same project modulator, as you can see here, and apply it to this, and apply it to the on. I can apply it to this. So if you click on a different track, it deactivates that. But what you have to do is just click on the thing that you want to do, because look, the same project modulator is here. So if I go to the master and create a duplicate like this, and I turn this on and I go to this, it turns it off, but it's still there because this is the master. So you just open this up and then you can apply this to anything. It doesn't matter. Whereas within Ableton, something that drives me absolutely batshit insane, for lack of better description, is that if you want to do stuff like that, let's say you create an audio effect rack. We'll just grab an erosion. You can activate something that is grouped on the inside of this. So I can go map, and then I can map this. I can click this and then go map, but I can't group this like this and then go map and then pick something on the inside of this. It's only bound by the macro. So what that means is that everything that I want to be automatable or modulatable inside of this, hey Kyle, is that I have to map it to a macro first and then map it to an outside macro. Whereas within Bitwig, yeah, it's basically twice the work. So if we were to just grab something here, let me just go to a new track. Let me close this. So I'm going to grab an amp, and I'm going to group this, and then I'm going to group it again because we can add our macros, right? But if I go here and I add a modulator of a macro, anything that is nested inside of this, look, I can modulate this. And so I only have to create one parent group in order to put stuff inside of this. Does that make sense? So one group to rule them all. And this can also be applied to third-party effects. It can be applied to first-party effects. But because of that, and also the sheer list of modulators that you have, like, yeah. I will say that Ableton is a little bit ahead in automation, just for this one feature, but you have different shapes that are built in like this, which are really nice. So you can do this and you can copy pasta. I don't think that this is too difficult to create inside of Bitwig. So if we wanted to do Bitwig, it works the same way to where, like, if you want to touch a control and then modulate it, you absolutely can do that. You can create shapes. You can hold 3 to create steps and shift. So you can do stuff like this, or you can hit 1 and double click anywhere in order to create your modulation. You can hit this in order to curve. So it's not that big of a deal. This is a little bit more convenient though. I really feel like Ableton caters more towards doing stuff by hand, where Bitwig is like, yeah, bro, like the world is your oyster. Okay, so that was one major thing. The next major thing is something that we have called bounce in place. So check this out. Oh, also hybrid tracks. So let's talk about that real quick. All right, so you all can see how we have MIDI, right? Well, check this out. I'm gonna go this, hit Command B, and now look, we have both MIDI and audio on the same track. Also, if you notice, we actually still have the effect rack on here as well. Now, something else is that if you were to, let me just cut this up, double click, and then go repeats, kind of like so. We'll create an exponential rhythm. I'm gonna go right click, slice at repeats, and then create fades on all of these, kind of like so. Okay, so you see how we've got this, right? Let's say I just want this one. When I double click, I can do this and hit Command J, and this will consolidate without actually printing the audio, which is really cool. Both of them have MIDI comping. Does Ableton have MIDI comping? I don't know, but there is that. So within this, the audio editing you know, if I want to bounce to a new track, I can just hit J, and you can see that I've actually still got all the source material. And then if I deactivate this, you can see that this has 129 milliseconds. This has, I know that if you do it with first party stuff, it works on Ableton, but this also works with third party stuff. I just deactivate the track without having to freeze it, and I've saved my CPU. So, I mean, there's that. Hey, Seek, give it some time, you know, try all of them. So that's a huge thing when it comes into flexibility with resampling and stuff. To be honest with you, 100% transparent, none of this matters anymore. And the reason why is because I use this guy called Rolling Sampler. Shout out to Bird's Things. I've got a review on this. This is the best 20 bucks I've ever spent. No matter what DAW you have, use Rolling Sampler. It will change your life. It'll be absolutely cracked and incredible, because what you can do is basically have this on your master. It will listen to any sound. It'll save it to your RAM, but it will only save to your hard drive if you pull it out. So, right, all I have to do is just click on this little thing right here, pull it out. Look, we've got that sample, and there you go. So all this stuff, if you have Rolling Sampler, becomes irrelevant, except for maybe like turning the tracks off and saving CPU. But this thing has changed my life. Bird's Things, you guys are, well, it's just one person, but fun fact, this was also made in Reaper initially. So there's that. So one thing that is pretty sick is that this has feedback within return tracks. So if I were to send something here to the DistTube audio culture, and then I right click and go new, I need to go plus to a new effect track. Come on, right click. Then what you can do is actually create a feedback system in between these two, to where this will feed into this, will feed into this. So you see that DistTube 1 will feed into effects 2. It can also feed back into itself, but I can also take this effect track and feed this back into this one. You got to be careful with this. This is extremely dangerous. So really make sure that you're working in low volume with this, but as a built-in feedback network, it's really cool. Really, really cool. And I encourage you to explore that, especially if you're into experimental sound design. Nope, a limiter doesn't always do it justice. You really have to work at low volume. Trust me, I'm somebody that has gone through that. Yo, Rizzy, what's up, bro? So something else that is really sick, that is really convenient, is, let's say I've got something like Scalar 2, right? Now in Ableton, what you have to do is you have to create a new MIDI track, and then you have to go send this out to, hold on, let me make a new MIDI track. So let's say I put Scalar 2 on this. I have to send the MIDI from this into this track here. So I have to go MIDI here from main into, I'm not doing this right, all ends, and then go from Scalar 2. Sorry about that. So now whenever I send stuff out, it's going to read the MIDI here. On Bitwig, if I just throw a phase plan over this or something, let's just do phase 4. Sorry, that's a phaser. Phase. If I go phase 4 like this and open this up, it works. So you don't have to do any of this like complicated MIDI routing and all that stuff. And not only that, but what's really cool about this is if you were to use something like a vocoder, because this has MIDI through, that means that you can actually put different kinds of synthesizers or different synths and stuff into the vocoder because it has MIDI through. So if I were to do like FM4, well, now look, if I hit F, sorry, that has to be activated, but if I hit F, you can see that this is reading, and so I can actually just place synths in here, so I don't have to do any complicated routing, and that makes things a lot easier to work with. We talked about multiple audio clips at once. Browsers everywhere. That's another super convenient thing. I think Control F is a great workflow in Ableton, but for this you can see plus buttons here, and then you've also got a browser on the right. So if you just hit plus, there's a browser. If you hit plus, there's a browser. If you click on this and hit plus over here, there's a browser. It's super fast in order to do that. You can set a keyboard shortcut that will pull this browser up to where you can do your search function, but I just use this as a sample. What's it called? I just use it as a sample thing because I think that no, it doesn't do that. I was hoping that would pull up the browser. One thing I would like to see from both is track presets. So something that you can make a new track and then it automatically pulls like a default up or something, track defaults. That would be really cool. So let's talk about the grid versus Max, I guess. The grid is a modular system that has a few different versions of it. You have a polygrid, which has both instrumentation and MIDI and audio built in. You have the effects grid, which is purely just for effects. So you can like grab shapers and create distortions and stuff, which is pretty cool. There is the transfer to where it's a built-in wave shaper, but it behaves very strangely. So you can do stuff like that. Then on the inside of this, you also have the note grid to where you can create your own custom MIDI effects, which is really neat. Watch polarity if you don't, because there's track default in Ableton. There is, I didn't know that. Is there a key command to search the browser panel and search? Yeah, and it's customizable. Looks like Soviet technology. It's German. So actually, they're both German. But yeah, so you can build custom effects within this, within both MIDI, synthesizers, and effects, and it's super flexible. One thing that I really want within the grids here is racks. So if I make some kind of thing, like let's say I like this device, I really want to be able to save this as a rack, and then that way I can pull it up. So that way if I go through the time of building a compressor or something, I don't have to pull up the preset, copy this, and then paste it in. That's really inconvenient. Just having an access to grid racks, I think, is how we would coin it, would be ideal. But there's that. Max for Live is a little bit more volatile, but you can create custom interfaces for it. You can do like custom graphics and all that stuff. This is like custom device builders and stuff, but Max for Live, in theory, is not as easy to use, but can take you further. And there's also a lot of built stuff, like I talked about, that has a immense legacy of crazy stuff within that. So the last thing that I kind of want to touch on that I think is important to talk about is, or at least as far as like the ideas that I have that I wanted to discuss, is that Ableton has a bunch of different samplers. Bitwig has one, but I think that feature-wise, well, let me just show you. So we have a few things. We've got the Granulator 3, which can do some really cool stuff. We have Simpler, which is an auto slicer, which Bitwig does not have. And then we also have Sampler, which for me, the key thing about this is that you can actually apply FM to your sampler. That's pretty much where that goes. They both have this thing called sample pool, to where you can create a zone, and I'm going to show you something really cool within Bitwig here in just a second, but both of them have this to where you can create 128 racks, all that other stuff, but there is no dedicated sampler, or sorry, slicing that is within Bitwig. So if that's important to you, you might want to consider something like Serato Sampler, or if you're on Windows, then I think that you can get like SliceX or, you know, different kinds of stuff like that. You can use a sampler inside of the grid, which is really cool. But my favorite thing, I actually prefer, for the most part, Bitwig Sampler for a couple of reasons. So the first thing that I want to show you is this: repitch mode, wavetable mode, granular mode. So within using a single thing, you have to use this by retriggering MIDI. But what's cool is that you can actually automate or modulate between the different modes of the sampler. And that's cool because you can go from like having something that sounds really ethereal or whatever, and then go to the repitch mode and do lots of crazy modulation with that. The second thing that I think is absolutely cracked is that because this can go into texture mode, if you go into here and create a sample pool, so let's just go create multi-sample, just like as you would, and then within Ableton. If we go to right click and distribute select equally, then you can do the cool little selection thing. But if you don't, you can actually granularize 100 up to 128 samples at once. So this is like an insane multi-sample granulator that you can utilize to like just make crazy sounds that are all just like meshed together. Serato Sample works on Mac. Yeah, it does, but SliceX is not, it does not work on Mac unless if you actually use it within what's it called? Unless we actually use it within FL Studio. So Max for Live is very expansive. That's the rub, IMO. Yeah, I agree. In Ableton, I use presets of groups of tracks a lot. I have to elaborate with lots of outputs coming from Atlas. You can do that on both, but sometimes it can be a pain in the butt. Show the custom modulators from the wavetable oscillator. The custom modulators from the within Ableton. Well, we talked about that, and we said like there's like weird, like everything, like this is not like, there's not a lot of cohesion with everything that Ableton has to offer. And like there's some cool modulation options depending on what device you use, but because they're all so different, it's kind of hard to find consistency. So you have LFOs, you have random. Some of these don't have smooth random, which drives me crazy. They all have this usually, which is kind of like a built-in matrix. And then some of these have a random option or a noise option. But check this out. So you've got LFO1, LFO2. But then if you pull up something like Meld, I really just think that they just need to update it. I would say that's the big thing. You've got these different options to where you can transform these and have this kind of modulation. But then you have something like, what is it? Let's just pull up Roar. And like, this is fine. If this is how the modulation like needs to be, like I'm okay with it, but it's so inconsistent. So this has a noise option that you can set to like sample and hold or wander or something, and then adjust the amount here. Maybe we can put that on the frequency, and then you'll start to see it move. There we go, I think. But yeah, it's like sometimes it'll go, maybe. I'm not hearing any sound from that. Are you guys? I'm not. I think that whenever I have both of these open, like one kills the other within audio or whatever. But yeah, so like it's super inconsistent, and that is kind of like hard to deal with sometimes, because it's like, shit, you know, what am I supposed to be using? And so like even for me making packs and stuff, I tend to gravitate just using the wavetable stuff because it's the most flexible, where like there's a lot of really cool other stuff in here, but the modulation in this just is very difficult. So I think that I covered most of the biggest things. Aside from that, like you can kind of see they all kind of have a similar, or they both have a similar workflow of like having the device menu down here, both, and then you can add stuff kind of like so, whatever. That's all extremely similar. Does anybody have any thoughts or anything that you want to bring up that for either that bother you or that you like, that like now would be the discussion time? The grid module that can make everything into modulators, including the synth output, thus allowing you to do modulations or whatever you want. Oh, you mean within the grid? Are you talking about the wavetable LFO, or are you talking about just wavetable? I didn't really try. I tried not to get specific with like, it has this modulator, it has this modulator. I was kind of just like, hey, here's a general thing. But I mean, yeah, there is a wavetable modulator that, or a wavetable LFO that you can apply, and then you can also pull this up within the grid as well. Wavetable LFO. You can also apply different kinds of modulation with like weird FM stuff. How do you make a square wave with the Bitwig LFO? Square wave. Module called modulator. Oh, so okay, I get what you're saying. So you can use an audio signal in order to create into a modulator. So what he's saying is that if you go modulator out, then what you can do is send a signal into this, and this becomes its own custom modulator with its own shape. So there's not really a reason for that because we have wavetable LFO now, but just so that way it's known, like it is a cool trick. You can send this into, say, hold on, let me grab a filter. Doesn't really matter. And what we can do is move this, and that's operating at an extremely fast rate. But you can see that you can send an oscillator into a modulator, and you can work with that in lots of cool and different ways. Anything can become a modulator. Phase modulator of sampler, for example. I think this is fine. This demonstrates the idea. You can also like do really cool like custom FM things. So if you use this and you send the signal into here, then this becomes a source of FM, which is pretty neat. It's not true FM, it's more of like PM or whatever, but you send something here, so you've got another signal. I don't want to talk about the grid much because I honestly don't use it a lot. But you in theory can send this into this and then send this into the modulator out. This is the effects grid. So you would have to work within the actual grid or whatever, but there's a lot of cool shit that you can do, and it's a lot more accessible, I think, than Max. I just don't think that I don't think that you can do quite as much. I don't know. The possibilities are limitless, but they're limitless in completely different directions, if that makes sense. In terms of controller setup, handling is absolutely ahead. Max Live 12 has some new devices setup controllers, and Bitwig and control system, but miss a lot of Bitwig's features. I think that, honestly, in my experience, with especially with like plug and play and scripts and stuff, I've had an easier time setting stuff up in Ableton than I have within Bitwig. And also, we can't really talk about the difference between the two because Ableton has push, right? So push 1, 2, and 3. There is that integrative system. So like if you're locked into the workflow of Ableton, you can in theory have it on a portable device and work with the hardware and stuff. Bitwig does not have a dedicated controller. So they did add freeze and flatten. Yeah, but the issue that I have with that is that it's a commitment. So that's what I was trying to explain, because if you just take this and you have effects on this or whatever, excuse me, whatever, it doesn't matter. If I do this and I just go like that, that just bounced it to a new track, but I still have the original. And then I can turn it off and I can actually save the CPU and I don't have to go freeze and flatten. Whereas if you do that on Ableton and you have something on here, where are my samples? Whatever, right? And you go right click, where is this? Freeze and flatten, you've committed the track. And so you still have to do it this way, to where you have to duplicate the track, or wait, sorry, you have to freeze the track. Where is that? Freeze track, duplicate, then flatten, then create a new folder so we can group this. Then you can turn this off, and this is something that I learned from Mr. Bill like a long time ago. And then you've got something called a recycle bin. So it's a few extra steps. And it's kind of annoying, and depending on how long this sample, this could take a really long time, especially with the more that you have effects and stuff stacked onto it, whereas like you don't have to do that within Bitwig. It's just, I don't know, it's more efficient. Freeze flatten is harder to reverse and takes more time save. You can always save 2 versions of the project, but you see how much more like inconvenient that is. You're absolutely right, and that truth goes with everything, right? Of whatever you don't have within this DAW that you want in the other DAW, regardless of what you want, there's always a workaround. It's just, I'm not here to be like, this is better than this is better than this. It's saying this is what you should consider. Is there equivalent to dragging and dropping samples groups into user library like you can in Ableton? Yeah, look, here's my library. So you can put anything in there if you want to. I have everything just saved into rolling sampler, and then it just pulls up rolling sampler, so it's a little bit easier. But yeah, absolutely, you can do that. In Ableton, if you drag the flows and crib into a new empty audio track, you get the new empty clip. That's true. You're absolutely right. If this is frozen, then you can just drag this to a new clip. Actually, you have to do the option thing, right? I still don't think that it's as convenient as bounce in place, but that's not working. So I did both, maybe it's shift and drag. I did both option, shift. So I just drag this out without holding anything here. And what it's doing is just pulling this out to a different frozen clip. So I might be doing something wrong. Into a new audio track, you get the new audio clip. Yeah, that's not working right now. It's still frozen. So, sorry, I guess it only works with MIDI. Oh, maybe so. So, I mean, yeah, that's something to consider. Can I group a bunch of tracks with all the effects on them, sidechain, setup, audio routing, etc., and save that group into a user library on Bitwig? No. Thank you, Abraham. There is no like, you can save it as a rack, but you can't save like tracks as a rack. So you can't be like, I'm going to group all these tracks and then save the group of tracks. You'd have to create like, it would be the same as Ableton. You'd have to create, you know, like a group or whatever, and then have all this stuff with all your sidechain routing and blah, 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 and be able to do that. That's a good question, but no, you can't do that. Can you do that in Ableton? Can you group this and be like, save this to library? No. How? I think that, so hold on. I feel that, no. So what this just did is it created a project. That's different. So that, yeah, this just created an ALS project. So let me see if you can do that to a new project. So one thing actually I think that is important to consider, which thank you for reminding me. And I don't know. I guess like, I wouldn't say that you can, but you kind of can. If you have another project like this and you have something like this, you can actually just take this and have multiple projects open at the same time and then drag and drop into a new project and then save that as a project. But I don't think that you can do that specifically. No. So that's an interesting trade-off. You can have multiple projects open at once, but I guess you can save like a new project because that says ALS and then just be able to pull from that. I guess that's their answer to having multiple projects open at once, which is interesting. I didn't know that. Thanks for telling me that. Try dragging it. I think you're behind because I just covered that. So Ableton has a groove pool. There's that. And Bitwig does not, but Bitwig has I feel like Bitwig has a more customizable groove thing. So there's a global groove on this that you can apply if you hit the play thing. And what's really cool about this is that you can use global modulators in order to modulate the groove. So if you go enable groove, you can set something up like this. And let me open this up. So if we go like this and we click on this and then we hit the play button, you can see that we can actually modulate the different grooves on here in order to create like custom things or whatever. The difference though is that you can only there's only one groove that you can apply to everything. So you can modulate it, but you know, it's not quite the same. Whereas with an Ableton, you can have multiple little pulls or whatever. And you know, where is the groove pool? Grooves. There it is. So you got to double click, and then like you can apply different grooves and stuff to different tracks, which is kind of cool. I don't ever use this personally. I know some people that are really keen on using this. I tend to find my own grooves through like stretching a sample out. So you know, my particular approach is to do something like this and then be like, okay, this is quantized, let's set this to repitch mode, and then let's find, you know, some kind of off wonky thing like this. That's a little bit much, so maybe something kind of like this. And then I'll just take like the percussion of this or whatever and start messing with this to try to find different things. Let's make that a little bit longer. And then loop that. And then I might like shift stuff over. That's how I find my grooves and whatnot, or that's one way to do it. I do think that Bitwig has better audio warping. So you can see that this is at 93 BPM. And our tempo is at 85. So this does a really good job of transient detection and like putting something in the right. It's not perfect, but it does a really good job of that. I don't know how that works or how good that is in Ableton. Let's see. This is at 80. Let's set this to 85. And then let's see if we can find that same drum loop. Because I know that this has automatic warp detection, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Can I close this? There we go. Let me go to samples. Let's see if I can find a loop. So this is at 100 BPM. I know that it's not the same loop, but let's see what that does. It's okay. Yeah, it's decent. I remember this being like absolutely broken when it first came out in Live 11, but it seems to be pretty okay. If you're coming from Ableton to Bitwig or vice versa, you're going to like notice that you might have to rethink how you do some things, and I just wanted to teach you this because this is important. So you see here how we have a beats mode on here. If you go to this, then you can control the transient shape of the entire thing. You see how the sounds are getting shorter or longer? I have, and it does an okay job. So there's that. On this, if you change this into transient detection mode, you do have a small, medium, and large, but this isn't how I would recommend doing this. So check this out. Don't do that. Do this instead. Slice in place. So slice in place. We can do it at the onsets. And now what's really cool, and make sure that you have your warping the way that you want it first. Behind this, you can actually customize how big or how small you want these to be. And the cool thing about this is that you can individualize it. So I'm not going to go and do this whole thing, but let's say with this one, I want it to be a lot shorter. And then this one, I want it to actually ring out. But then with this hat, I want this hat to be really short. You actually have more control with like your beats mode on here than you do within Ableton. I just think that Ableton is more streamlined when it comes into like getting smaller chops. So you know what I mean? Like that's just like one thing that you have to consider whenever you're moving back and forth in between. I like the flat design aesthetic of Ableton. Bitwig looks too glossy for my taste. Sadly, the live API missed the groove pool. You can't automate, map, or modulate any parameter, only the global value. Which UI do I like more aesthetically? Convenience. I like Bitwig better. People say that it's really clunky and yeah, claustrophobic, but the thing is like you can move everything. You know, if you want to make it unclaustrophobic, just pull the windows out. There you go. If you don't want to like work within all of those options that are within the inspector control, you can just double click this and then go to pitch and then be like, okay, I'm going to change the pitch of this, or I'm going to change the panning, or you know what I'm saying? So like it's relatively flexible, but I think that people are overstimulated with the colors, right? Because even though you only have black or white, like the color aspect of this is where people get caught up. But yeah, you can move this shit out of the way. Or if you don't want to like work within this claustrophobic thing outside of just moving this up or down, something else that you can do is just pull up the editor tab. And now you've got all these options that you can like really focus in and work on your audio stuff. Oh man, Bitwig is, I think Bitwig has the best audio edit. For somebody that is almost primarily within audio, I think Bitwig has the best audio editing within any DAW. Cubase has some really cool stuff with the offline editing and all that, but I still think that as a workflow of music making and all that, Bitwig is really doing some amazing things. I do hope that they fix that issue with the transpositioning of the warp mode. That's one thing we've been asking for years outside of themes. So repitch, you can't pitch this. You have to do it by tempo, which really sucks because that means that you got to do like some kind of math or whatever. However, one small solution that you can do is I have this keyboard shortcut set up to open and close bracket, and what that is scale by 50% or 200%. So that means that you either have it or you double it. And what that means is that if you have this in repitch mode, at the very least, you can pitch it by octave. So if we have this sound, which is a drum sound, maybe I should find a sine wave or something. That'll work. We'll just take this first part. If I set this to repitch mode and I hit close bracket, it's going to move it in half. And if we go and do it the other way, it's going to pull it down an octave. And I really like this keyboard shortcut. It's really extremely handy. It is a custom keyboard shortcut. I will do a video on like what shortcuts I use within Bitwig and stuff, because that's how people are always like, how do you work so fast? And I'm like, I just made a workflow that, you know, a keyboard workflow that works for me. So there is that, and that's really cool, but the individual intervals in between don't work so well. Being able to change the pitch or volume in one slice sample is so wild. Yeah, because like, especially like I talked about this before, but if you have a drum loop and you throw it in here, you can actually edit the drum loop and replace some of the sounds. So I can show you what that looks like. So if we double click on this, let's say for whatever reason, I just want to replace this snare. I can do that. So I can go and find a snare. We can just put that in. And so you can actually customize and edit the audio clip, but you can still see here that it's all still contained within the container. And then you can save that into your library if you want to, and you can individualize everything as well. So let's say this snare, just for this, I want to pitch that up. Well, now that's unique. Now also, let's say maybe for this part, I want to warp it and pitch and change the warp mode of this into repitch, so that way it's going to play at a higher note. Well, now check that out. Let me delete this, but we've created, like, everything can be individualized within this. It's an audio event. So what that means is you can place any kind of audio within the event and then save that as a clip. So we created a custom drum loop out of that, and then you can utilize that for all of your needs or whatever, or you can go like absolutely wild with this. So we can highlight all of this, and this is something that I really enjoy doing. I'm gonna highlight all of these, change the warp mode back to, I don't know, say Elastic Pro, grab the pitch, and then add chaos to this. Let's just raise this up, and now what you'll see is if we go to the pitch here, I believe this should all be like absolutely wild, if I'm not mistaken. It should all be different. I know that much. Yeah, so if you look here, hold on one sec, let me try that again. Let's add the chaos. Let's spread it out. There we go. Now you can see that working in real time. So we can actually change the pitch and like do crazy glitches and stuff of all of these in real time, which is really cool. And then you can also warp all of these together. So I'm going to hit that bracket a couple of times, and now we've got something different like this. We can highlight this, go pitch. Like, you can get wild with this very, very fast, which is really fun. Let's spread all that out, grab the chaos. We can change the warp mode to something like slice. Do that. Yeah, I do think that hardware integration, well, MIDI controllers maybe not, but hardware integration is very nice. But I don't know enough about it because I mean, I guess I use the Octatrack, but what I do is I send the Octatrack into another Electron device, and then that way I just get direct audio. I don't like doing it like the CV ins and all that stuff. It's a little beyond my interests and what I am willing to do for time. So yeah. Trying to think about what else is like a big thing that might deter people. Oh, so on the conversation of themes, you cannot have custom themes, but you can have custom color palettes, which is cool. So you can upload an image, and then this will try to do its best to break down a color palette for you, and you can have like uncanny colors kind of like this, which I think is kind of cool. You know, neon. I like the Madeira ones. The one thing that I would say that I would really like to see is, like, I wish that the contrast would scale. So the darker the color, the lighter the waveform should become. Because even though I really love some of these deep purples, I can't see this, and I can't work with that because it's all black. So it'd be really cool if it, like, you know what I mean, had some kind of thing to where it would change the color of the waveform. Some people really, oh, this is a big one for some people. Some people really hate that you cannot see, let me change the color of this, sorry, that you can't see the lines. That doesn't bother me, but some people absolutely hate that you can't see the grid lines in between. And so that's something to consider. I've never had an issue with it because, I don't know, it's like my eyes play tricks on me to where it's almost like I can kind of like invisibly see where those grid lines are supposed to be. Is it true that Bitwig's summing engine is better than Ableton's? What do you mean by summing? It's nice when you have the right interface. You can send out. Do I use my MPE pad and do you use the Bitwig device MPE features? Yes, sometimes. The way it renders samples and export, I think it's the exact same. I hate the grid line over the clips. I prefer Bitwigs. I do too, but I don't know. I like the solid colors. I'm a big fan of the glossy shit. There is latency compensation. Yeah. So I do have an embod.me array, and I do use the MPE features and stuff. Oh, and that's another thing. If you want to talk about modulation, that bothers me within Ableton, This is incredibly inflexible. So it's really cool that they added the expressions and stuff. The expression control, but the problem with it is that you can only map like one thing at a time. So if I wanted to, I think, hold on, let me like make sure that I don't put my foot in my mouth, but yeah, I think that you can only map one thing at a time. So if we wanted to map the key tracking, I think that we have to, I don't know, let's just do the octave. Yeah, so within the expression control, you can only do one at a time. Can we have more than one expression control? I don't know. We're gonna find out. So you can have more than one, well, which is a thing, but this is kind of where we come in, and I don't know if that's gonna work or not, but that's good to know because I might actually have to start using that when I'm building these racks. But whenever we talk about like modulators and stuff, it's all confined like this, so it becomes part of the rack. And if you move it, you lose a lot of the modulation. And if it's not grouped, then you can't even like move it in with something. You can modulate with a modulator, so this is one of the new features here. But one of the issues that I have with this is, let's say I'm mapping this to the level. That's actually showing. That's interesting. Most of the time the modulation doesn't show. What? Okay, let's do another experiment, because I do want to try to exemplify this, because I was complaining about this the other day. But let's say I have this here, and then let's say we've got this, and I'm just going to go to this mapper. Okay, so as you can see, this is moving, and we can adjust the mod here with what we want to do, but it's not showing up on the EQ. That's annoying. It's not the end of the world, but it is annoying. But if we switch this to remote, now you can see that it's moving, and it's like, why can't we just have that? Just come on, just. That drives me crazy. Yeah. So. Right, it only shows modulation on the knob itself. So that's something that, and then instead of like adjusting this, it's weird because if you use an LFO, you have to do the adjustment here. But if you're doing any other kind of like map controlling or whatever, then you have to pull up, well, shit, you have to go like this, then you got to group it, then you got to open this up to the macro, then you have to go to map, then you have to pick what you want to map. And like doing like mod remapping and stuff is just like an absolute pain. But the other thing with this is that you can map this here, but then you have to adjust it up here. So like now you're in two completely different workflow situations. So if you're only doing like one or two things, it's not a big deal. But the fact that you have to like divert your attention, let me just show you. The fact that I have to divert my attention behind these kinds of things with these kinds of sounds that I have has been extremely challenging. Call it a skill issue. I don't really give a shit. It's just hard. That's not what I wanted to pull up. I wanted to pull up Stargazer. Okay. So if you look at this, we've got an instrument rack in here. Then we've got a percussive rack in here. And you'll see that on these, I have to have like these other things that are mapped to this. So macro 10 is the pitch between both of these that have to be mapped to macro 10, which is the pitch. The morph rate, oh, that fucking drives me crazy. So on the morph rate, if you have something that is like changing an LFO or something, and you have all of these mapped to the same thing, they can only be the same speed. So you can't make them different speeds, even with the mods sometimes, or at least I haven't found a way. And so like trying to come up with like cool and interesting interactions behind these modulators, they're all conformed to the macro. And so, and then like, I can't key track this. So, or I think that I can, but I have to create another group. So if I do this, let me see. Let's say I want to, key track the morph rate here. If I go just to this and I go to key tracking and I do mapping, it doesn't work. So that means that I have to create another group. But now if I create the group, I still can't do it. So shit. So I have to figure out another way in order to do like multiple instances of key tracking through each step. That sucks. That's not very fun. So there's that. I think that this is going to sound weird, and feel free to agree or disagree with me, but I actually think that Ableton's like built-in DSP, I think it sounds better. I know that's like a crazy thing to say, but I actually think that Ableton sounds crispier. I don't know what it is. I'm not trying to do the whole FL thing to where it's like, you know, oh, you know, FL10 or whatever, like just sounds better than than whatever. But I've noticed that Bitwig is darker. Call it from Manifest Audio. Yeah, but the thing is like I don't want to use that stuff because it's third party that someone else built. Yeah, it could be the effects. I don't really know. I do feel like there's a difference in the sound, and I'm not trying to perpetuate like sound quality or whatever, but I've noticed that there's a difference. And yeah, I don't know why. You can try null tests for each of them. Each of the effects. Yeah, I definitely think like, oh no, that's not even a contest. DAWs use the same codecs these days, or each thousand they'd be somewhat of a difference, which is why Pro Tools was considered better. That makes sense. Yeah, I guess I could just like throw a loop in here, and I'm not going to do the phase test and all that other shit, cause I'm not that invested, but, I will at least say that the effects within, we'll just go with that. The effects within Ableton sound a lot crispier. I use third-party effects these days anyway, so it's not that big of a deal, but, Ableton definitely has a sound to it, and Bitwig does too, and that's neither like good or bad. It's just something to be aware of, because I've noticed that like I've had to fight really hard to get stuff sounding like brighter and more like pristine and clear, where this actually does a really good job of making stuff sound insanely dirty, which is pretty cool. But it's just one of those things that you have to kind of consider. But hold on one second. Sorry, we were just making sure that somebody got to the airport and made it on time. So Dan Worrell's null test concluded Reaper is the most transparent. Which third-party effects VST do I like the most? I absolutely love Shaperbox / Infiltrator. I'm a Kilohertz guy. I also really like the minimal audio effects. That's probably what I use the most. Yo, thanks for the follow, Miko. I appreciate it. First-party stuff also is something that someone else built. Yeah, but what I'm saying is like, it's not about the person building it. It's about like stuff that's integrated. So if I were to build something that I was going to sell, that means that you have to go download that other Max for Live pack. And I don't know what the intellectual property laws are, because just because it's free doesn't mean that I can use it for commercial purposes, or you know what I'm saying? Like it might, like I said, it might be free, but I haven't read the fine print of that. So I just try to stick within the devices that are within the Ableton suite. Even though it's really inconvenient, because I know that there's like some sick Max for Live devices, but that would be equivalent of me making money off of that pack. So someone would not only have to buy it, I'd also have to go through the legalities of trying to figure that out. And I try not to do that. Cause I don't want somebody to come after me being like, yo, you made a bunch of money off my shit. And I'm not trying to like take advantage of anybody like that either. So yeah. Max for Live devices tend to be really buggy to the point I pray I won't fail a project when I pull into a project. That's a good point too. I will say that Bitwig is consistently more stable than Ableton. Ableton crashes a lot. I've lost some really cool projects that I really cared about in Ableton, even with the recovery thing, because like something was fucked up. One of my biggest pieces of advice is to go into your settings in Ableton, if you decide to go with Ableton and you're worried about upgrading or whatever, and go into File and Folder and turn this off. Turn the ALS files off. Instead, just go collect all and save into your project and create a copy of all your samples. It'll save your life. No missing files, none of that dumb shit, but fuck, man. the whatever those files are so irritating. Hey Pat, it's probably my biggest factor in wanting to switch to Bitwig. Ableton as a whole crashes so frequently it's painful. Yeah, it's definitely, it's always been unstable. I think I covered everything that I wanted to talk about. Does anybody else have any other like key features or maybe things that matter to them that I haven't discussed? VST AAS handling is a pain. Sandbox, right? That's a good point. Bitwig has sandboxing, so if a plugin crashes on here, it'll crash within the plugin itself. It won't crash the project. It's not perfect. Sometimes Bitwig has crashed on me, but that is something that definitely applies. FL Studio is even worse. Yeah. Appreciate the stream. Just watching someone go crazy while I'm in brain dead mode is chill as hell. The MIDI clock issues with Ableton are horrible. I actually don't know what that is. I'm not aware of that. Is that just with like hardware stuff or what? Yeah, thank you so much. Guys, we've got a really cool stream. 55 people in here. Thank you so much for kicking it with me and just listening to me talk about nerd stuff. I really appreciate it, and I wanted this to be more so of a discussion, so that way it's not just me like projecting my bias. I just wanted to be like, hey, here's everything I know about these. Well, not everything I know, but like, here's the biggest stuff, and make an informed decision. And I wanted to tell you what I like and what I don't like. I still wish that Bitwig had a freaking slicer. I still wish that we could do repitching. I want grid racks, a dedicated clipper that says soft clip, and I know that I can push that thing as hard as I want to. Bitwig's dynamics as far as building an OTT is really not fun. So I have plenty of complaints within Bitwig as well, but you know, I tend to still favor towards Bitwig, if anybody's wondering. With external gear so out of whack on Ableton, does it with my Oxy. Oh really? I don't have that issue within Bitwig. But that's good to know. Track in Ableton, auto 32-bit bridging. Wait, what? I still wish Bitwig would integrate MIDI capture. Yeah, I covered that. There's a free device called MIDI Cap that you can use. That was earlier in the stream. Is there a Bitwig subscription every year? Yes and no. So if you want to continue getting features, then yeah, there's an upgrade plan. But you don't have to upgrade. So you own the license that you purchase. But if you like, I've already done this comparison, but it would take you so many, like I think like 5 or 6 years if you bought the Ableton Live Suite cold turkey and continue to upgrade versus how much it would cost for you to continue upgrading within Bitwig. So Bitwig is cheaper. Bitwig natively bridges 32-bit plugins where using them is smart or not, but I don't know, Ableton doesn't do that. So that's true, but Ableton also runs AU plugins if you have a Mac, and Bitwig does not. Piano roll is still lacking for the composer side. I did talk about that. Right now I use Bitwig/Ableton 50/50, depends on my mood. You need a MIDI clock sync box to get hardware to properly sync like Expert Sleeper's Osama or Floating Point's multi-clock. That's interesting. I didn't know that. You don't have that issue with Bitwig. Best of both worlds. Default saturator preset. Bro, are you saying, Victor, are you saying why does it do that or what? Is that a complaint? Or one of the things making me stick with Ableton for now is operator. I tried to mess with FM4 and Phase 4, but operator sounds so much better. I honestly, I agree with you. I think operator is really good. And I do not think that FM4 and Phase 4 are as capable. I will say though that Bitwig is more flexible, and I would actually encourage you to try Polymer, because Polymer, what's cool about Polymer is that it's like a prerequisite to getting into the grid. So something I really appreciate about this is the modularity behind it, because I can just swap between all these different engine modes, these different filter modes or whatever. And I really want Bitwig to do more of this. They did that with a Filter Plus and it's freaking awesome. But once you're ready to like take this and like do more with it, so you want to do more FM or whatever, you can right click and then go convert to Polygrid and then open this up and start to add more stuff to it. So you can like add your mix or whatever, like this, and send this into one of these guys, kind of like so, and then create another chain, like an ADSR, Or you can even copy pasta this and move this in here. And wavetable sounds really good. And go wavetable. And now you've created a second layer. And so now you can start to send some of this stuff. And you can be like, okay, we're going to take the output of this and apply it to a filter or something, or maybe even a ring mod and start to do some crazy shit. So I'm going to take the output of the pluck and then send this into, where's that at? Send that into a modulator here and start like getting extremely crazy with it. Skill level or like skill curve is a lot higher, of course. I love that operator can like build harmonics. I wish that this had something that you can do. Both of them can import wavetables. I just learned that about Ableton, and I've had Ableton, like I've had Live 10 forever. I didn't know that you can do that, but you can import wavetables in both of them, which is really neat. This is just a little bit more flexible because Bitwig has a shit ton of features that Ableton will never have. It was modulation cables off the meat rack. Yeah, I've already covered about that, but it doesn't auto calculate the BPM you're jamming at. Yeah, it does. You just have to say import time signature. So if you go to MIDI cap, there's also like the monkey thing. I don't remember what that's called, but sorry. Go here. If you go like this and then you go here, would you like to import the tempo and time signature? Yes. So even though this is still at 85, like it automatically, it didn't change the host BPM, but what it did do was it conformed it to the tempo of whatever your host is at. And then you can just change the tempo or whatever. I know that within the MIDI cap, within this will automatically change the tempo for you, but I honestly don't like that. That's a personal thing, but actually that kept it the same. I think in Ableton 10, if it detected it, it would change the BPM for you. But I don't remember. Oh shit, good to know. I hate the layout of a lot of Ableton stock devices. So many are not intuitive. I agree. All Bitwig needs is dancing character. Yeah, we definitely need FL Chan. But I have an answer for you. We have something that might be better than FL Chan. It's a third-party device. It's called Cat Jammer, and it's free. And this will dance to whatever your tempo is at. I think I just need to hit play. So there is that. Yeah, so there's that. That's your FL Chan / Ableton equivalent. That previously mentioned actually offers a lot, like adding different waveforms to each harmonic. It's not operator and has limitations, but some stuff you can do is crazy. Just search up Cat Jammer VST and you'll find it. Yeah, but like there's pros and cons, right? You can drag ALS projects into completely different projects in Ableton, perfect for when you have 8-bar loops. We already covered that. The contrast though is that with Bitwig you can have multiple projects open at once, and you can also open Ableton projects within Bitwig. It's prepared for every question. He even got the dance question. He's a Jedi. No, I'm not a Jedi. But I mean, yeah, I like to be educated on the matter because this is a big topic, and rather than be like, this sucks, it's like, here you go, right? This is what this has, this is what this has. Would a Jedi know if he was a Jedi? Yes, he would. Oh shit. So Ableton has a spectrogram, but Bitwig also has an oscilloscope, which I really like. I rely on this quite a bit. There is a spectrogram within Bitwig, but I don't really find it to be as accurate as I want it to. It's not like a span or anything. Spectrum. So there is this, and there is a large version of this, resolution huge, wide. So, you know, that exists. which is okay. One thing that's really sick about this though, that's absolutely cracked, is that you can actually pin this like this and always have this up. And like if you're using like 4x or whatever, or I think that's what it's called by like Noisy and all that stuff, then that might be mute, but just as a means of having access to this always. So if you look and I click on a different channel, this never goes away until you unpin it, which is really cool. I do that a lot with the oscilloscope, especially when I'm designing drums. So I'll just place this right here and always have that going whenever I'm doing whatever it is that I'm doing, which is really cool. So even if I'm on a different channel, I still have that. And that's extremely useful for whatever design that I'm doing, especially if you are building drums. Super convenient. It is kind of annoying because you have to pull the window up every time you open up the project. And that would be really neat if it would just be there whenever I open it up, but it's not that big of a deal. I'm good at what I do. I'm right. Bitwig has a nice sampler granular engine too. I already talked about it. Definitely already discussed that. So yeah, that was an hour and a half of the differences. And forgive me, I hope that you all don't feel like I was shitting on Ableton, but I do try to like explain why I have frustrations with some of the workflow approaches within this. It still does some things really well. Like MIDI cap is great. You know, the new MIDI features are awesome. I think that the effects and the sounds and stuff, like you just can't beat it in some cases. It stands out enough that makes it really unique. For me though, as a means of approaching actual song creation and workflow and idea jamming, if you take Max for Live out of it, I prefer this because it's a lot more flexible for me. So I just wanted to say thanks though. Your content definitely helped me get into Bitwig and probably was the reason why I even bought it. I owe you thanks for that. You don't owe me thanks. I'm just like, it's just education, right? And like, there's a lot of really awesome Bitwig creators that are, I don't know, I try to teach in a means of like, hey, this is how I make music, not just like, hey, here's a general feature and whatnot. And I think that Polarity does that really well as well. And he's like in a totally different world with the stuff that he does. So shout out to you, bro. Alex Reed, Garen, who else is doing the cool Bitwig stuff? Bathymetrics, which I haven't seen her in a really long time, but yeah, I mean, she came up with the clip to zero strategy and like blew up for that, and she definitely deserves it. Dash, of course. Sorry, Dash Glitch. But there's a lot of people. Zane uses Bitwig, but he's not doing content creation. Yeah, Baffy went bye-byes. But there's a lot, and there's a lot of people that are up and coming and still like, you know, figuring it out and figuring out their interpretation or whatever. But for me, I'm not like, here's the next trick. This is more of like, I'm really getting into, here is my music and here is how I got to the music. And that's what I want people to take away from what I'm doing, as opposed to like, you know, I do have a sound design video that's coming out here soon, but like I've kind of covered it all. And I'm really tired of like, here's how you sound like Skrillex. Here's how you sound like this person. I want to teach you how to sound like me because that's what I know how to do best. Data Broth. Fuck. Sorry, Data. I'm cooked today, guys. I apologize. Yeah, Data Broth, 100%. Yeah, so Nick formerly from Noisia, well, if you subscribe to his Patreon, then he'll show you stuff within Bitwig, but there's that. Yeah, in the Noisia Patreon he does. I mean, if we're going down that route, a lot of big artists are starting to use it now, but honestly, like I really want to try to deter you from being like, this artist uses this program, so you should. It really needs to resonate with you because just because your favorite artist uses that to make the music they do doesn't mean that that's how you're going to use it. Chi is a flagship of Bitwig. Yeah, absolutely. Chi is now. I think, did KJ move to Bitwig? I saw some filmmakers using Bitwig. Well, that's odd. Oh shit, that's a really good point. Bitwig does not have a video editor, but Ableton does. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, there's no native. Well, you can attach this to Touch Designer, which is a totally different ballgame, but Ableton natively has a very decent video editor that you can just like toss shit into. So fuck, I can't believe I forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me. I wish that I would have said that when I was covering all the other stuff, because the chances of somebody seeing that Yeah. But for film editing, I think you're better with Reaper, aren't you? I don't know. I've tried Reaper one time and absolutely hated it. So I'm really not sure. Really, yeah, I really don't know. Does anybody else have any questions regarding this? I'm going to try to wrap things up, I think. I usually don't stream on Thursdays, but I really wanted to do a comparison video and kind of just chop it up with you all and, have some fun. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. Thank you so much. It means a lot. And I stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. So please come kick it with me. If you just want to hang out and talk or lurk, or I don't really care, but yeah. No, good night. Dank, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Sebo. I appreciate it. Cubase or Studio One, probably better for film editing. Pest Stream, it's an okay thing. We do all right here. Before everybody leaves, it would be really cool if you all could like the video. If you find any clips in here, please don't leave yet. But if you find any clips of like specific things that resonate with you, please clip it and then put it in my Discord under the clip it thing. So that way I can upload stuff as shorts. That would be really awesome. You don't have to, but that would be really helpful. And then if you like my sounds, check out alchemy.com or book a lesson with me. I do both Ableton Live 12 and Bitwig. Do you think Ableton feels the heat of Bitwig on their tail? No, because Bitwig has been around for 10 years now. And they haven't changed anything about their ways, I feel. So no, I don't think so. It's the end. I'll have to watch from the beginning. Yeah. Well, we covered everything that I can think of. And if you're catching the end of this and there's something that you want me to talk about in the future, I'm more than happy to, or we can like discuss this in the comments. But I think that I kind of got the biggest stuff. I think. So I know that there's some small features that I probably didn't mention. Like I just noticed one. You can actually leave comments on here. You can also write notes to yourself. But like I feel like this stuff is kind of trivial, so I'm not like bringing that up. But unless if it's like a really big thing, then I can't think of anything that I didn't cover. May regret in some way of leaving. Who knows? When will I upload your philosophical conversation about stacking stuff? Are you talking about layering? I've already got a video recorded. I just haven't. It's actually uploaded. I haven't dropped it yet. And actually, I forgot to make that available. Yeah, Soundgarden started making content again, and he's checking out Bitwig and stuff too. So yeah, Garden Sound. My bad, the way that I read it. But yeah, Garden Sound is an OG. He's been around forever. So there's that. So anyways, guys, thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna wrap up here and have some dinner and maybe play some Warframe. But if you're brand new here, thank you so much for checking out my channel. We've got a great community here, really kind people. And just know that like I appreciate you guys spending time with me because you could be anywhere right now. So thanks for checking everything out. That's all I got. I'm going to leave. Have an awesome rest of your evening, everybody. Please feel free to reach out to me on Discord if you need anything. And I will see you all tomorrow. Bye, everybody.